So, if you've been around the channel for any period of time over the last 10 months, you may have noticed a massive influx of cultural analysis videos revolving around the world's most recognizable tabletop franchise, Warhammer. That is to say, both Fantasy/Age of Sigmar and 40k. From debunking the long-held myth that Tau and the 40k universe were the most weeb faction in the setting, to explaining the weirdly period accuracy of ninjas seen in the Eshin clan, an entire organization of ultra-evil Master Splinters and AOS, to multiple video-spanning sub-series of the even more weirdly period accuracy of the brutish orcs back in the 40k universe and their historical ties to samurai. But you know what the funny thing is? Every single time I post a new video on Warhammer, I get a lot of comments leading me to believe that whatever faction was being talked about in the most recent video was somehow, without a doubt, the most weeb faction between the two universes that Warhammer takes place in. And I mean, in the case of the Eshin clan having been trained in literal Japan, I could 100% understand that takeaway. But in all honesty, for as historically shinobi as the Eshin are, and for as much as the orcs make up the historically accurate mentality of the samurai between 900 AD to arguably the 1800s, I wouldn't classify any of them to be the faction that takes the most theoretical influence from Japanese culture. Because, to be completely frank, all of these aspects are incredibly niche. Between Clan Eshin, the Tau, and the Orcs, each of these factions only make up a theoretical inspiration in but a single aspect of Japan's militant history, not even its history in general. Eshin may be somewhat of a historically accurate ninja, but ninja were a drop in the bucket of Japan's history. The same could be said about the Orcs. While I've made video after video talking about how the mentality of the greenskins was eerily similar to the nature of real samurai, samurai are, yet again, not the be-all end-all for what Japan was and is historically. And for the Tau, yeah, I got bad news for all the weebs out there. Speaking from experience, anime does not directly equal Japanese history, culture, or general life. Not by a long shot. And all of these topics revolve around Japan almost exclusively from a military perspective. Ninja, samurai, and even Gundams revolve around the militant state of mind of Japan in the past, present, and potentially future. And while it was a militant class that ruled Japan for century upon century, there is so much more to Japan as a country than what popular media has shoved down our throats. You know, what about religion? What about spirituality, you know? What about everything that isn't gloriously murdercising your enemies? It's something that I've been pondering a lot in the last couple of months in the wake of all these other videos, and I think I finally found an answer. I honestly can't think of any faction in 40k that represents it more strongly than the Craftworld Eldar, the quote, nice space elves, and that's nice with the biggest quotations that I can possibly muster. I mean, this is Warhammer 40k after all, there are no nice guys. But regardless of all of that, yeah, I can't escape the feeling that the Craftworld Eldar really are, in the day-to-day aspect, the most Japanese-like in the entire setting. And who are the Eldar? Well, let me introduce them with this video sponsor, Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, who not too long ago finished releasing a total of 5 different Eldar heroes that you can play as. Calandus, the Ranger Sniper, Athena, the Winged Autarch, Eldrion, the Farseer, Malgan Ra, the Phoenix Lord of Death, and Jane Zar, the ferocious Banshee Phoenix Lord. And yeah man, just look at these. Safe to say, there is absolutely a very distinct look to all of these elves compared to any others in fiction. And not just with their armor, I mean, when was the last time you saw an elf with a high-powered sniper rifle? Or an elf death lord with a scythe gun that shoots shurikens sharpened to the molecule? And much like the rest of the 70 different champions from the game's 16 different factions, each one of the Eldar champions have their own specializations, strengths, and weaknesses. Calandus and Eldron can decimate things at range with large caliber sniper rounds and psychic lightning, while champions like Athena can literally cut through swaths of enemies. Which both goes to show how versatile the Eldar can be in lore, as well as how you can approach different fights in the game in many different ways. And to explore all those strategies, there are a lot of different modes to choose from in this game. There's hundreds of PvE narrative missions that have you playing against and as the different factions in the game as you unlock them over time, or you can fight against other players in pre-made teams in the arena mode. There's also resource salvage runs, guild raids, and even the PvE horde mode that is Onslaught. And that doesn't include all the different limited time events that happen in the game as well. And while just looking at it, the game can seem kinda simple on the surface, but there's a lot of tactical thinking that goes into every single match. It's not just character level or what they're equipped with that matters, but all the different terrain types, such as elevation and whatnot. It really does make or break games based on my personal experience. And that's something that I really want to drive home. I've been and still am enjoying this game, for real, for real. It's been my go-to mobile game for when I want to take a break or need to kill some time. So if you're big into the setting and have been on the fence about this game, give it a shot. It's freaking free, you don't really have anything to lose, and it might surprise you like it did me. So if you want to check out Warhammer 40,000 Tactics for yourself, you can either scan the QR code that's on the screen right now, or hit up my link in the description. No joke, it's pretty fun. Okay then, after having a look at all the different kinds of Eldar elves that are out there, you might be looking quizzically at your screen saying, Gaijin, how in the world does this even remotely relate to Japan?
What?
Alright, I admit, it might be a little crazy, but listen, if Pancreasnowork can do a video theorizing that the Imperium of Man are space Gaijin, I can do a video talking about how Eldar are one of the truest space weebs when it comes to everything about Japan that isn't warfare in this franchise.
I have been summoned through talk of rats and elves.
Oh, hey dude, glad you're able to come by.
Honored to be here, my good man. Wherever there are elves, I shall make myself known.
Hey, I don't mind the return of your buttery smooth baritone voice in my videos. Plus, having the internet's greatest Eldar simp in this video might actually give it a shred of lore legitimacy.
I suppose having the foremost expert on elves would help, wouldn't it? So what's the plan today, Chief? Phoenix Lords? Aspect Warriors? Kane and his endless losing streak?
Well, believe it or not, your favorite craft world, Iandin.
Ah yes, the best craft world. The only one to figure out that in the grim darkness of the far future, having friends is actually a good thing.
So how about this, Pank? You know the lore better than I do. How about you talk about some of the more key aspects of Iandin, and then I can go back through and just see how Japanese they are, cause I wager by Marathi's mega milkers, I'll be able to find a connection with every single one.
Well, I'll take any bet you got with Marathi's tits on the line.
Well, how about we start off with the one thing I always hear you Eldar lovers bang on about, the Avatar of Kane. Surely something as ubiquitous as that should be a good starting point.
Sure thing, Chief. An Avatar of Kane is not just a statue the Eldar puppet with psychic magic. Within it is housed the very essence of their god, Kalementia Kane. When Kord and Slaanesh double-teamed him, he was shattered, and shards of his essence landed in the middle of every craft world. When the Eldar go to war, they do their best to avoid waking him up, for even with their control over their psyches with their war masks, his presence drives them to bloodthirsty rage. When there is no other option, though, either 6 Phoenix Lords will assemble to awaken the Avatar, or more likely, an Exarch will be christened the Young King and sacrificed to bring the statue to life. When this is done, the Exarch is no more. He may be absorbed into Kane or fade into nothingness, but in their place walks out an avatar of the god of war and murder. Unfortunately, due to 40k writers despising anything with pointed ears, his main role seems to be getting clowned on by whoever needs to look strong today, but anyone who's played him on the tabletop knows few things can survive his attention. But Kane isn't the only inanimate object brought to life through magic and rituals of the Eldar, there's also the Wraithguard. Wraithguard are the souls of dead Eldar warriors placed into a wraithbone body and brought back to fight. Though most Eldar consider it to be little more than necromancy and detest the practice, them being a dying race isn't an exaggeration. Frequently, there's not enough of them left to form an army, and in these cases, the souls of the Eldar are taken from the infinity circuits they rest in and are placed in a Wraithguard to fight another day. On Kraftlad Iandin in particular, the dead not only make up a majority of the army, but a majority of its citizenry as well. Due to small incidents in their history, such as getting hit with a weapon used for exterminatus, followed by Tyranids eating 80% of whoever was left after that, Iandin has been forced to use wraiths as standard operating procedure. Entire halls of the craft world are filled with the dead, who partake in the craft world's affair with equal prominence to those who remain in the living world. Wraiths do not see the world as we do. They're like a crocodile half-submerged, viewing the world through their psychic senses as if they were dreaming. Because of this, they need a nearby spirit seer to babysit them. They can be divided into roughly 4 main categories: Wraith Guards, Wraith Blades, Wraith Lords, and Wraith Knights. Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades are much the same, sharing the same basic chassis and strength. Wraithguard carry forth ranged weapons capable of ripping holes in reality and destroying even the strongest of enemies. As I said, they're the souls of dead warriors, though in Iandin in practice, they're frequently just whatever soul was available due to the demand for soldiers. Wraithblades, meanwhile, are the melee variant. They fight with swords and axes that can take on even the mightiest of Khornate berserkers. Unlike normal Wraithguard, the spirits within Wraithblades are those that are filled with rage. They're so angry their spirit stones actually burn when they're activated. Both variants are tougher than even Terminator armor, shrugging off all but the most dedicated anti-armor weaponry with ease. Wraith Lords, meanwhile, are the souls of Eldar heroes or other great figures, oftentimes exarchs. In tabletop terms, they're Eldar dreadnoughts, but in the lore, these are the sort of heroes that would be leading squads or even entire armies into battle. No mere battle brother put into a moving coffin are they. These Eldar were the sorts that could turn the tide of battle by themselves. They move with a grace that the metal boxes of the Imperium just simply can't. An even rarer variant known as the Wraithseer exists as well, the soul of a dead Eldar Psyker, such as Warlock or Farseer, placed into a Wraithlord chassis. At one point in the game, you could use these as your warlord, and even though that's no longer an option, these Eldar undoubtedly still guide their living counterparts at every given opportunity, especially on Iyanden. Finally, we have Wraith Knights. You take a pair of Eldar twins, either wait for one of them to die, or speed them along if you really need that Wraith Knight stat, and then shove the dead one into the thing. You tell the living one to pilot the damn robot, and then you have the equivalent of an Imperial Knight that can do backflips. They're so big and powerful that even though they're roughly equivalent to an Imperial Knight, on the tabletop they have the Titanic keyword. These wraiths are not only powerful, but incredibly important in Eldar culture. They're the only things capable of making the trip to the Crone Worlds that once were the center of the Eldar Empire to gather Spirit Stones, which the Eldar need to keep their souls safe from Slaanesh upon death.
See, gang, I wasn't joking when I said Pank knows his Eldar. I know that was a massive, massive lore drop, but trust me when I say that all of that was extremely important, because listening to Pank talk about not just the Avatar of Cain, but also all of the Wraithguard, it reminded me of something very, very key in Shinto. See, one of the things that makes Shinto so unique as a religion is the concept of the Shintai. Basically, Shintai are objects that the different kami, or natural spirits of the world, reside in. The objects themselves aren't kami, but rather act as a sort of tether to the mundane world. And more often than not, objects chosen as Shintai tend to represent Japan's old imperial regalia, that being a mirror, a sword, or a Magatama-shaped jewel. But not all Shintai are those specific objects. Just as often, a Kami Shintai is a natural object in nature. A particular rock, a tree, a river, or even a mountain could act as a Shintai for a Kami. Mount Fuji, for example, is actually a Shintai for the Kami Konohana Sakuya Hime, Kami of not only all volcanoes in Japan, but also, as her name suggests, the Kami of blossoms and general natural life on the earth. Heck, even people can be Shintai. Yokozuna-level sumo wrestlers, for example, are designated by the Shinto community as living Shintai for Kami to dwell within them. That's why many times you'll see Shimenawa rope and Shide paper wrapped around their waists similar to the ones that you see on Shintai trees or rocks. It represents their ability to house a Kami. So I'm sure by now you're already starting to see some of the connections here, with the Avatar of Cain being one of the most obvious. Because as Pank said, statues of Kylomincha Cain that the Eldar possess aren't simply statues that are just brought to life by magic. Somewhere within the object is a piece of the spirit of Cain himself, and by performing one of two different rituals, they invigorate that piece of Cain's soul to bring that statue to life and act as a vessel for Cain himself. Now, safe to say that practices of Shinto do not use rituals to give Kami a movable physical body, despite how cool a concept that sounds when I say it out loud, but Shinto priests do conduct various rituals that directly interact with the spiritual presence of the Kami itself. Heck, you know in a Matsuri how they have those portable shrines with people dancing with, around, and even sometimes on top of them? That's literally a portable container for the Kami Shintai, and the whole purpose of transporting around is so that the Kami can get in all the fun and celebration and jive with mortals during the Matsuri. I am not joking. So, despite being used for polar opposite means, the spiritual and ritualistic connection between the Avatar of Cain and the concept of the Shintai are surprisingly similar. But that's just Cain and the very, very basic understanding of Kami and their Shintai. To really blow your minds on how eerily similar Iyanden's Eldar are compared to Shinto practices, we gotta dive a bit deeper into the nature of what Kami are comprised of, what can become a Kami, and the concept of the Wraithguard in general. Somewhat similar to the Avatar of Cain, the Wraithguard are constructs that house a spirit or soul of an Eldar that had their spirit stone jammed into it. But unlike Cain, these aren't souls of a god. They're the souls of regular mortal Eldar. Granted, most of these are the souls of extremely important and powerful Eldar, but mortal Eldar all the same. Moreover, as Pank said, when it comes to Eldar Wraiths, Wraith Blade Spirit Stones literally burn when activated, as the spirits that dwell within these Spirit Stones are filled with nothing but rage. Meanwhile, Wraith Lords and Wraith Seers are still fearsome on the battlefield, but have an equal if not more important role of maintaining the community of Ianden in ways beyond combat. So here's the funny thing about Kami. Their spirits have different parts representing different aspects of their presence called Mitama. Currently, there's 2 theories floating around that there are either 2 kinds of Mitama or 4, but for simplicity's sake, we're just gonna go with the theory of 2. There is the Adamitama, which makes up the anger, volatile aspect of the Kami's soul, which is responsible for the creation of negative natural phenomena, like natural disasters, diseases, and so on. Then there's the Nigi Mitama, which is the polar opposite Mitama, representing the calm, caring, soothing part of the Kami's soul that is also responsible for the natural phenomena that benefits humanity. Good catches, good harvests, good weather, things like that. So different are these 2 aspects of a Kami's spirit that, oftentimes, a Kami's independent Mitama will be enshrined in completely different locations, as well as different Shintai. For example, Sumiyoshi, Kami of the seas and sailing, has their Adamitama enshrined in Sumiyoshi Jinja in Shimonoseki in the western end of Honshu, while their Nigi Mitama is enshrined hundreds of miles away in Sumiyoshi Taisha in Osaka. Going back to Eldar Wraiths, I can't help but look at the different emotional states of the different Wraith Blades, Wraith Seers, and Wraith Lords, and not be reminded of the different states of the Kami's Mitama, which are enshrined in objects. With the Wraith Blades being so overwhelmed with rage and wrath that their Spirit Stones actually burns, feels way too similar to the Adamitama for the Kami, the aspect of the soul that exists in pure anger and rage. And then there are the Wraith Seers or Lords who have a much calmer demeanor and exist to better the lives of the remaining Eldar through extra spiritual means. This, of course, seemingly very similar to the Nigi Mitama. I mean, at first I also thought this was kinda stupid, but when you consider that every Eldar soul within a Spirit Stone is the soul of an individual that had complex emotions in life, but are now just seemingly defined by one emotion or another, it just feels like an isolated state of a Mitama. The soul of an Eldar in a Wraithblade may have very well been a very angry warrior in life, but they had more feelings than just anger. But in this pseudo-weird spiritual state, anger is the only thing that consumes their soul, which is exactly what the Adamitama is. And if that isn't enough, let me throw this at you. Pank didn't mention it, but I know for a fact that Eldar are a species that experience emotions on a far higher level than humans do in the 40k setting. It was their indulgence in their emotions that eventually turned them into sinful little sweat goblins and birthed the chaos god of excess Slaanesh. So, safe to say that emotions are both very important and very powerful in Eldar society, right? Well, the exact same can be said for the Kami. The whole reason why Shinto priests perform the rituals that they do is to appease the Nigi Mitama's aspect of the Kami's total Mitama. The more the Nigi Mitama is appeased, the smaller the Adamitama becomes. To a degree, this is kinda similar to the theology of the Craftworld Eldar. They actively suppress all of the negative emotions that they could foster by focusing their entire existence onto one thing, whether it be war, magic, art, history, and so on. Now, I don't have an exact one-to-one connection here, but I find it really interesting that the importance and control of emotions reflect so strongly with Eldar and Shinto. And if I may be so bold, I could even see a connection with Wraithguard, Spirit Seers, and Kami. Like Pank said, Wraiths see the mundane world and the warp in a sort of half-and-half clouded kind of way, and they need Spirit Seers to help guide them in the mundane world. In a similar way, Kami exists both in our own mundane world in their Shintai, but they also have a complementary existence mirroring our own called the Shinkai, or World of Kami. And while Shinto priests don't babysit Kami, so to speak, in this mundane world of ours, it's their responsibility to venerate and emotionally control, to an extent, the Kami. So, in a way, Spirit Seers and Shinto priests kinda share the same job. Sorry, I know I'm going in circles, but I'm hoping you're picking up what I'm putting down. Cause here's the other kicker. Enshrined Kami are not always aspects of nature that have been around since the creation of the natural world, nor are the Wraithguard. Unlike the Avatar of Cain, who's been around since millions and millions and millions of years in the 40k universe, these are just regular Eldar spirits that dwell in their construct bodies. Important Eldar souls, yeah, but still regular Eldar souls nonetheless. And that's the interesting thing about Shinto. Regular people can be enshrined as Kami. Important people, mind, but regular people nonetheless. One of the most obvious examples of this being Emperor Meiji, who is enshrined as a Kami at Meiji Jingu, one of the biggest shrine grounds I have ever been in my entire life. And while I know Meiji Shintai isn't gonna come to life anytime soon, I just can't shake the fact that such an influential and critical leader of Japan like Meiji was enshrined as a kami, presumably within a Shintai, while some of the greatest Eldar leaders are themselves essentially enshrined in Wraith Seers. Now, I know by saying that it sounds like being in a Wraith is an honor. It's really not, as Pank has already said, but I can't get over this fact that you have souls of individual mortal people basically transcending into pseudo-immortality through spiritual means. But there's still one other thing that connects these two together in such a weird way that it blows my mind just thinking about it. Remember how Pank said that a large amount of Wraithguard and Wraithblades housed a great deal of Eldar warrior souls? Well, Shinto's been enshrining warriors as kami for hundreds of years at this point, with the most prolific example being Yasukuni Shrine in Chiyoda, Tokyo. And say what you want about the World War II controversies of this shrine existing, I'm not gonna argue them. But what I am going to say is that Yasukuni Jinja has enshrined within it 2,466,584 soldiers and other military personnel that go as far back as the Boshin War of 1868. It's not just World War II, it's way earlier than that. These are millions of human beings who have had their souls enshrined as kami. And no, none of them are gonna have their souls jammed into mechs or other constructs and go fight for Japan, but do you kinda see where I'm coming from here? How weirdly similar this all is? I mean, I don't mean to sound hyperbolic here, but I cannot help but think that Yasukuni Shrine is somewhat weirdly similar to the Eldar Infinity Circuit. Basically the place where all Eldar souls go to hang out in purgatory so they don't get eaten by Slaanesh and eventually, in Ayanit's case, get jammed into a Wraith construct. Like, isn't this all just so weirdly similar to each other? Now, does that mean I really do believe Games Workshop was directly inspired by Shinto and Shintai to develop the Eldar concepts of Cain and the Wraith and so on? Not likely. If anything, I think it's just a likely coincidence. But the takeaway I want to leave with you all here is that despite being a potential coincidence, it's a freaking rad coincidence, and moreover, I think that such an odd yet compelling similarity between the Eldar and Japanese religion could inspire some real sick nasty homebrew craft worlds, you know? You want samurai and ninja elves in space? This is the easiest way you can make them happen. Have an Eldar craft world that actually revere Wraith Knights as, well, I guess kami in a sort of sense. Tied to their own pseudo-Shintai as a way to interact with the mundane world, very similar to how actual Shintai work. I don't know, it's just a really cool thing to think about.
It's not just the avatar of Cain or the Wraithguard, Chief.
Wait, what?
Yeah, man, I may not be the culture expert here, but there's plenty of other things with the Eldar that make them more Japanese-inspired than any other faction in the 40k universe. Some far more obvious than others.
Well, crap, man, now I really want to go into this. But considering how much time I'm gonna need to look into all of these things, maybe we need to do a two-parter video?
Or maybe we could do something on my channel?
I mean, that'd be dope as well. Where can they find you, my guy?
You can find me over on my channel, Pancreasnowork. I cater to all your needs, as long as your needs are elves and rats.
And hey, if you'd like to see some more 40k content from me, I've got a whole new channel devoted to it. I mean, granted, it's from an orc's perspective, but I've not had this much fun making videos in a long time, so I hope you check it out. But in either case, thanks for coming out and lending me a hand, dude.
Always happy to do it, Chief.
And also a big thank you to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus for sponsoring this video. Hit up my link in the description or the on-screen QR code if you're looking for a new turn-based tactics game to pick up. And finally, a big thank you to my patrons for making this video possible. I know a lot of you were really torn on what video I should make this month, but I'm really glad you all voted on this. Not only do I need to get out of my orc comfort zone every once in a while, but it's always a great time having Pank on this channel, and I will find any and all excuses to have him here. So if you want to learn more about the culture we live in through your favorite games, movies, and shows, sub up, get notified, and until next time everyone, this is Gaijin Goombah, signing out.